Welcome back to the Aces Let's Do It podcast, where I'm your host, Dominic Archer. Today we're going to be doing some MLB stuff because spring training is right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers reported today, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some projections. We're going to break it down by um, each division. So we'll do the AL Central today, and then we're going to go ahead and keep posting videos about um, every division. So we're going to start here with the AL Central. So how this is going to work? We're going to go through their farm system, where they rank, and overall what to expect from the lineup. So just right out of the gate here, let's get into it. So for the AL Central, this is on Fangraphs. So Zips projects that the Cleveland Guardians are going to win the division with just 83 wins. Following them will be the Twins, the White Sox, the Detroit Tigers, and rounding out the Central is the Royals. You know, Cleveland's got a really, really good team. They've got some of the best young arms in baseball. Jose Ramirez is obviously a front runner for the MVP every single season. He's just a phenomenal player. They picked up Josh Bell. They made some really savvy moves. I really like Stephen Kwan as a top of the lineup guy. I know that he's not going to get a ton of power, but it's just an overall reliable bat at the top of the lineup to get on base and maybe get guys like the Naylor brothers working together. That could be very, very good for them. So let's go ahead and look at their depth chart. So, like I said, their starting rotation. This is on MLB.com. Bieber, Cavalli, Plesac, Cal Quantrill, and Tristan McKenzie. McKenzie's going to be a stud for many years, and obviously Shane Bieber, good strikeout pitcher, nice ace to have in the start of your lineup. In the bullpen, they also have a ton of young guys here that could break out. Tuki Toussaint's bounced around a little bit. He was a top prospect early in his career, but Emmanuel Clase is by far one of the best pitchers, or bullpen arms rather, in all of Major League Baseball. He and James Karinchak offer some of the best strikeout, velocity, and movement of any high leverage relievers in baseball. And the fact that Cleveland's got both of them on their squad, 83 wins to me is low. And whenever I do look at these Zips projections, I always do think that they come in a little bit lower than expected. For whatever reason, I can't tell you. It just seems that Zips is always projecting lower on guys. I don't know why. I'm a little higher. Maybe I'm just biased and I'm hoping for everybody to succeed. But 83 wins is too low for me. I think this is a team that can climb to 90 wins. I don't know if they'll get more than that. 91 would be very hard, especially with some of the best teams in baseball being in the American League, and the White Sox to be a bounce back candidate. So while I do think 83 wins is low, I don't think 90 wins is easy, but I think they can get there, especially with how bad that the Tigers and Royals are going to be this year. I project them somewhere around 88 wins, maybe 89. Definitely win the division. And even if, let's say, the Twins or the White Sox bounce back and have really good seasons, I think Cleveland can still snag one of the wild card spots. I really like this team. So then when we go look at the lineup, they picked up Mike Zunino, who's a really good defensive catcher, and he does offer some pop, and he's had some good offensive seasons in the past. He's just a really nice signing. Bo Naylor's a young guy. He's 22 years old, going to be 23 years old in just about a week. A guy who they're really counting on to log some big league innings and eventually take that starting catcher role. At first base, they have his brother Josh Naylor, who's just a couple of years older, 5'11", 250. He's a big guy with a lot of pop. He could also hit for average. This is a dude who this season really came on strong for Cleveland. They're a young team, man, and at 25 years old, he was able to put together a slash line of 256, 319 OBP, and then a 771 OPS. Also slugged 452, had 20 bombs in 122 games. This is a guy who they're really counting on. Only 80 strikeouts in 449 ABs. So if I pull up my calculator here, 449 divided by 80. It's the other way around. So he's striking out 18% of the time. And if I'm not wrong here, I think league average is around 25%. So the guy's putting the ball in play, and he's also walking a fair bit. 38 is not great, but you wish he can get that up. And he's improved every year. He's been in the big leagues, so they're really counting on him. But like I said, they picked up Josh Bell, who I think is another savvy move. They brought him in on a 2-year deal. He's 30 years old, switch hitter. This past season between Washington and San Diego, he was really good in Washington, but things didn't materialize in San Diego. In Washington, 301, 384, 493. And then when he got to San Diego, in 53 games, 177 ABs, a slash line of 192, 316, 271. So Cleveland's banking on his ability to be a really good hitter, not in San Diego. But overall, I really do like Josh Bell. I think he's a guy who can definitely bring some stability in the middle of the order. And he's an older guy, right? So he's going to help some of these younger guys like Bo Naylor along, and just a really, really good signing, in my opinion. We head to second base where they have Andres Jimenez, another younger player. He's going to be 25 this season. And another guy who hits for a high average, gets on base, also has a little pop. Cleveland's building a really nice lineup. It's a little different than their 2016 squad, but I think they're really starting to build around high contact guys who get on base. And they have a couple of guys who can hit quite a few home runs, but they're really relying on guys getting on base. So they've got Tyler Freeman here. He's going to be 23 years old. Former compensatory pick. Came up to the big leagues last season. What wasn't entirely good in 77 at-bats and an OPS below 700. But he's another guy who can really play basically all around the diamond. He's got a good arm, good speed, just a really good athlete. Comes in at 6 foot, 190 pounds, third base, but he can play second base. Like I said, he can go all over the place. So another younger guy that they're going to be looking to contribute at a decent level at the big league level. Then they have Gabriel Arias, 22 years old, had a cup of coffee in the big leagues last year, less than 50 at-bats, and an OPS below 700, but another guy who can get on base. In 47 at-bats, he had 8 walks. Again, I really like what Cleveland's building. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NL Central for quite a few years. And then obviously Jose Ramirez, he needs no introduction. We all know what he can do. 30 years old, and the guy just produces every single year. I mean, he's been doing it since 2014. In the last couple of years, he had 36 home runs last year, 29 last year, and then he had 17 in 58 games in 2020, really coming on as a power hitter. And a slash line of 280, 355, and 514 right in the middle of your lineup. There's nothing more you can ask from, and he plays a solid third base. Really, really good player. And then at shortstop, Ahmad Rosario, a guy who high-touted prospect while he was with the Mets. Things didn't materialize. He gets traded over to Cleveland. He's played solid, 282 average and 283. So, you know, he can be a high-contact guy. Not a lot of pop, but, again, a reliable bat to stick somewhere maybe at the bottom of your lineup to produce a couple of guys to get on base. And I like him. 11 home runs both of the last 2 seasons. So, Ahmad Rosario, somebody to really, really keep an eye on. Maybe he can break out this year for them. And in the outfield, they've got Stephen Kwan, who I talked about, a high-contact guy, rookie last season, spent basically the entire year at the big league level, 147 games, 298 average, and a 373 on-base percentage. Then Miles Straw, the veteran out there in center fielder, former Astro, is 28 years old, still got a lot of baseball left in him. 221 average, 291 OBP, and a 273 slugging last year, so not what you'd like to see from him. He can be better than that, definitely. His time in Houston, he was a much better contact guy. 2020 wasn't very good for him, but he bounced back in 2021. A guy who doesn't hit a lot of pop, not a lot of home runs, but a guy who can get on base and provide some stability, at least defensively. And then Oscar Gonzalez, he's also listed out there in the outfield. 25 years old, another younger guy, 6'4", 240. And he was really solid, man. 91 games, 296, 327, 461 with a 788 OPS. Had 11 home runs, 45 driven in. I keep saying it, man. Cleveland's going to be a nice team to really worry about. They are building something, and if they can keep things together, man, they're going to be tough. So 83 wins to me, that's just too low for me. They have a solid farm system, if I believe. Scrolling through here, they have a couple of guys who could have come up to the big league level this season and provide nice, maybe not high level play, but they're going to have some debuts this year. The fifth best farm system in all of baseball currently, and with their roster already having a bunch of guys who are 24, 25, and playing at a high level right now, there's nothing that tells me that Cleveland won't be better than 83 games. In fact, I think, I'll say it again, 88 wins is a low estimate. I think 89, possibly 90. But I really like what Cleveland is building right now. Daniel Espinillo, 22-year-old right-handed pitcher. He might be able to come up this season. George Valera, an outfielder, 22 years old. He's a guy who, down in the minor leagues, has provided a lot of pop. So somebody who, if they're struggling power-wise, they can go down in minor leagues and pick up Valera and really have a nice young prospect to lean on. All right, so now we're going to head over to the Minnesota Twins, who won the Carlos Correa sweepstakes after, it seems, for the third time. He signed a free agent deal this offseason, but finally settled in back inside. Minnesota goes back to where he was last year. So this Twins team, they're sitting at 80 wins, according to Zips, and I think that's about right. The Twins, to me, are kind of in limbo. They made some good moves. They picked up Pablo Lopez, but they shipped out Luis Arraez, the batting league champ. So I don't know. It's, they have a couple of good arms. Joe Ryan is a breakout candidate. He's been really solid for them since being traded from Tampa Bay here. He's 26 years old, had a 3.55 ERA last year. Could be somebody to lean on. Sonny Gray, veteran who's been around for a while. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's been in the big leagues for a while, and that's for a reason. He's no slouch. He's going to provide, if not high-level pitching, he's definitely going to be able to eat some innings. A 3.08 average last year in 24 games. If he can stay healthy, he's definitely going to provide you a season that's just going to be really solid. There'll be stretches where he's really good, but there'll be stretches where he's not. He also might have a couple of nagging injuries, but over the last 2 years, he's made over 50 starts. Rather, he has 50 starts in the last 2 years. So I think he is a reliable arm, but a good pitcher to have. And then Pablo Lopez, who had a really solid season last year, comes over, like I said, from Miami. 10-10 with a 3.75 ERA last year in 32 starts. Pitched 180 innings with 174 strikeouts. So he's almost a strikeout per inning guy. Just somebody who I've always thought has just been one of the better pitchers in baseball and never really got recognition. Obviously, he had Sandy in front of him last year, but I think Pablo is a really, really good starting pitcher. A really solid number 2 guy. I don't know if he'll ever develop into an ace, but I think Minnesota has a starting rotation of 3 guys who are going to be at least number 2 caliber in Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray, and Pablo Lopez. But below that, they traded for Tyler Mahle. They have Kenta Maeda. Randy Dobnak has made some starts. Chris Paddock, who had a really promising start to his career while he was with the Padres this past year in just 5 games. 4 ERA. He's been injured quite a few times in his time at the big leagues already. It's just really sad to see somebody so talented not be able to be on the field for long stretches of time. He had right elbow inflammation. He was transferred from the 60-day DL, and just never got things going throughout the season. So hopefully they can count on him to be one of their aces. The last time he was a full-time starter, a 5 ERA and 23 starts, not particularly good. So they're really hoping that he can bounce back. And then in the bullpen, Jorge Lopez, who they traded for from the Baltimore Orioles, had a really solid season last year. 2.54 ERA in 67 games. He is somebody that really turned it on last year after not doing very well in 2021. So he's looking to be one of their better relievers out of the pen, possibly the first guy out for Minnesota. They have Emilio Pagan, Johan Duran, who has one of the better fastballs for a young pitcher, 25 years old, a 1.87 ERA in 57 games. Just an all-around imposing figure on the mound. He is a big guy with a big fastball. Could develop into one of the better relief pitchers in the major leagues. Trevor McGill and a couple of other nice pieces as well. So this bullpen is going to be solid. I don't know if they're going to be top of the American League, but they definitely have quite a few arms that are reliable. And, this team might pitch. They might be playing in a lot of close games, so that pitching is really going to be needed. Then when it comes to the lineup, we got Christian Vasquez here. They picked him up from the Boston Red Sox, somebody who had a really solid year with the bat in his hand, 274 average. And for a catcher, I'd say that's pretty good. The last couple of years have been up and down. 2020 had an OPS of 801. And then in 2021, in an OPS of 660. So what Christian Vasquez are you going to get here? Who knows? He's really been kind of a backup. And in the 2 years, he's been a full-time starter. Again, it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. The first year in 2019, where he had over 100 games, 797 OPS, so very productive. And then in 2021, a 660 OPS, like you said. So can he be somebody that, bounces back and has a really productive season where his OPS is north of 750? Absolutely. Then at first base, Jose Miranda and Alex Kirilloff are the two guys on the depth chart here. Both young guys. Miranda, last season at the big leagues, a 751 OPS, 268, 325, 426 slugging, 15 bombs. So somebody who's probably going to take those first inning ABs, or rather first base ABs. At second base, Jorge Polanco, a guy who's been around quite a while now, 29 years old, and has had a very productive big league career OPS of 779. Plays solid second base. He's been healthy. This past year, he's a little banged up, but still was able to play over 100 games. And in the season prior, played most of the year as well, 152 and then 55 in 2020. So you're going to get a reliable bat in Jorge Polanco. At third base, they also list Jose Miranda, but they also brought up Nick Gordon last year, who's been one of their top prospects for a couple of years now. And at the big league level, he was able to produce 743 OPS in 138 games. Not a home run hitter. He's got 13 career big league home runs to his name and just over 600 at-bats. But he hits for a solid average. And he also hits quite a few doubles, 28 last season for Mr. Gordon. And then obviously Carlos Correa, the big free agent signing, comes back to Minnesota. But they also have Royce Lewis, who also was a former first overall draft choice of these Twins. So Royce could move over to third base, or Nick could stay at third base, and maybe Royce moves around the diamond a little bit. I know he has some flexibility. Um, Nick Gordon, Alex Kirilloff, and Byron Buxton, and Joey Gallo, and Max Kepler. The deepest part, I believe, on this team is the outfield. Joey Gallo obviously has not been quite the same since leaving Texas, as he had an up and down year. Well, as up and down as you can get for a guy who hits 160, but things just haven't gone well for Joey. We all know that he's got amazing power and can hit 50 home runs in a single season if he wanted to, but the strikeouts have been just a problem. He has over 1,000 strikeouts in his big league career, and he doesn't even have 800 games played yet. If Joey can get his strikeouts to closer to league average and suffer some of that power, I think he's going to be somebody to worry about. He's 29 years old. He's 6'5", 250, big, strong guy. And it might work out. Who knows? And then Max Kepler, who has been around the big leagues for a while, he's got some pop. Down year this year, 155 games, had a batting average under 230, was only able to spank 9 home runs. But last season, he had 19, and then just a few years ago, he had 36. So we know that Max can hit some home runs and provide some pop in the middle of the order. And then, 80 wins, I think, is right on line for the Twins. I don't see them really eclipsing more than 80. And if they do, 85 to me would just be, if the Twins win 85 games, and I'm a Twins fan, I'd be very happy about that. This is just kind of a meh team, and outside Carlos Correa, they really don't have some high-level players. Now, guys like Nick Gordon and Alex Kirilloff and Royce Lewis can definitely blossom into some of the league's best young hitters. But I just don't see it. They're going to have a solid lineup in the American League. I don't think they're better than the Guardians. They probably are better than the White Sox. But I just don't see any high-level bats outside of Carlos Correa. And then in terms of, maybe they can get some help through the minor leagues. They have just a league solid average farm system. They come in at number 18 with a couple of guys who could provide some much needed sparks to their lineup. But they have Brooks Lee, who's a shortstop. Royce Lewis, like we mentioned. Emmanuel Rodriguez is one of the better young outfielders in minor league baseball right now, but he's only 19 and a few years away from the big leagues. So I don't know if they're going to get some high-level play out of rookies coming up through the farm system. So now, as we move on, we're going to talk about the Chicago White Sox. They're projected to have 74 wins this season, and last year was very disappointing. A lot of people thought that the White Sox would be the one of the more exciting teams in baseball, with Eloy Jimenez, Tim Anderson, and Luis Robert, and Dylan Cease. And while Dylan Cease did develop and prosper this past year, it was kind of a down year for everybody else. Lance Lynn wasn't very good, and neither was Lucas Giolito. Inconsistent play all around outside of Cease and Kopech. They did just sign Mike Clevenger, but with the ongoing sexual assault case, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito, if they bounce back, that rounds out a rotation. But Dylan Cease is the only guy they have right now who's at least going to be on the mound for more than 20 starts. Because while Kopech is very, very talented and only 26 years old, injuries have plagued him throughout his big league career. He did pitch 25 games and 119 innings, but can he consistently stay on the field and be and do what Dylan Cease did last year and blossom into one of the young arms of the American League? Again, I think that this is the third best rotation that we've talked about. The Twins definitely have a better one, and Cleveland has the best in the division. Um, and then, unfortunately for their bullpen, Liam Hendricks was just diagnosed with cancer, so we will see how he goes with that. It's a big loss for a guy who's just an absolute sweetheart and somebody who has played very well in a White Sox uniform. They paid a lot of money to get him, and he's played very well for them. But we'll see if he's able to pitch in this season. It's all up in the air whether or not he can play this year, but we'll see. But they do have a couple of other guys like Garrett Crochet, former first-round draft choice out of Tennessee, who played in 2020 after being drafted in 2020. Had a 2.54 ERA in 59 games, so another guy who is really good in their bullpen and somebody that they're going to have to rely upon heavily. Aaron Bummer, 29-year-old, pitched well in 32 games last year. They have a lot of solid relief pitchers. Jose Ruiz is a guy who I think can turn into a solid reliever. He had a 4.60 ERA this past year, but he has shown flashes of brilliance the last 2 years. He had an ERA under 3 in 60 games. So if he's able to find it, he can be somebody to rely upon in their bullpen. And they have Kendall Graveman as well, who was very good for them last year, 318 in 65 games. Then when it comes to the lineup, Yasmani Grandal and Carlos Perez and Sebi Zavala, they're all going to get at-bats this season. Yasmani obviously signing that big deal just a few years ago and has an odd slash line. At one point, he was I think he had a batting average under 200, but he had an on-base percentage close to 400, and really struggled down the stretch. 202, 301, 269 in 2022 for Mr. Grandal. So while they're paying him a lot of money, he's not really producing at any level. He's not even getting on base like he did just a season prior, where he had a 420 on base. But catching is definitely going to be a question mark for them going forward, because especially they don't have any guys in the minor leagues behind the plate who are going to be able to come up and take over. Just on MLB.com, they don't have a catcher in their top 28 spots. Their 29th and 28th best prospects are the aforementioned Carlos Perez and Adam Hackenberg. So what they've got right now is what they've got heading into 2023. Perez only played 7 games last year, so it's hard to really evaluate him. 222 average, 222 on base, with a 333 slugging and 18 at-bats, 4 hits, 2 doubles, 2 RBIs. So we'll see. Maybe he can take the reins and really develop into a starting catcher, but we'll have to we'll see on that one. Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets round out first base. Vaughn, top 5 pick, somebody who I'm really high on. I think he can be one of the best hitters in baseball. 750 OPS last season with a 271 average, 17 home runs. Bounced around a little bit, but now that Jose Abreu is in Houston, he will be taking over the majority of the first base reps, and I think he's going to blossom this year. He's only 25 years old, or will be in April, and he's going to take that starting gig and run with it. And then as for Gavin Sheets, he'll bounce around a little bit. He'll play a little first, play a little outfield. Somebody who's got pop in his bat, 15 home runs last year, but it doesn't get on base very much. A career OBP of 304. Not somebody that you really rely upon to really do more than just hit the ball out of the park, but he's a nice bench bag to have. Only 26, so he can definitely improve on some things. Second base, they have Rami Gonzalez, who came up last year as a rookie, and then Lurie Garcia, the longest tenured Chicago White Sox now. Gonzalez is a nice young piece, 26 years old, came up to the bigs in 2021 with only 10 games and then 32 last year, and hasn't put it together. But he's somebody to look upon this year to really improve and possibly be the starting second baseman, because the last couple of years, Lurie has not played particularly well. an OPS right at 500 and 300 at bats last year. The season prior, though, he did have a 700 and a 758 OPS, but again, at 31 years old, the White Sox are looking to get younger, so Gonzalez could take over at second base. Yoan Moncada, who some say is one of the most disappointing players in baseball. He had a really great start to his career as a White Sox. When he finally put it all together in 2019, we thought that we were getting a franchise third baseman who would compete for All-Stars and possibly MVPs for years to come. And it didn't really happen. In 132 games, 315, 367, 548, like I said, in 2019. 2020, he struggled, and in 2022, he also struggled with a 626 OPS. But we saw flashes of it again in 2021, where he hit 263, 375, and 412 with 14 home runs. Just a guy who, if he can consistently play well, and the big word is consistently, he is a force to be reckoned with. But who knows? He's also been injured a few times, missed quite a few games this past year. So we will see with Yoan. But if he can put it together, him and Vaughn put together one of the best corner infields in the American League. And when it comes to the outfield, we're going to go ahead and if Eloy can stay healthy, the guy will hit 50 home runs. I truly believe it. The big thing with him is health. He's 26 years old, and he's going into his fifth big league year, and he's never played over 122 games, and he did that his rookie year. If he can put it together, he'll hit 50 home runs. And what's even more impressive is that in the games he has played, he's played really well. He is slugging north of 500 for his career and a batting average hovering at 276. Hit 295 last year. But he only has 71 home runs. When this is a guy who can definitely hit 50 in a year and potentially be a 30 home run guy on average. Can he stay healthy? That's the big question. It always seems like some nagging injury pops up, whether it's a strained hamstring, a sore, it's whatever. He's been on the DL a bunch of times and missed a ton of time this past year. And then Luis Robert, if he can stay healthy, he's a guy who can definitely be one of the more exciting players in baseball. Hasn't played 100 games yet in his big league career. This is his third season. Now in 2020, obviously, there were 60 games. He played 56. So he basically played a full season. But the last 2 years, he's been really hurt. And again, same case as Eloy. When he's on the diamond, he's great. In 2021, 338, 378, 567 slash line, and then this past year, 284, 319, 426. If he can stay healthy, again, they have a lot of young pieces who can turn into some really good franchise players. I mean, you think about if Eloy goes to the designated hitter and you hit a guy like Luis number 2, and then Eloy at 3, and then Vaughn at 4 or 3, and then Moncada at 5, and they're all playing really well. I mean, this is one of the more dangerous lineups in baseball. It's just, can these guys be on the field together, and can they play consistent? But they also signed Andrew Benintendi, who I thought was a really good signing to a 5-year deal. 28 years old. He's bounced around the last 2 years, but he's been traded twice, so it's a little different. But somebody who's a high contact bat, hit 300 last season. Obviously not going to provide you 20 home run pop, but he'll get on base and he'll hit at the top of the lineup. So going back to that, maybe you hit Benintendi 1, and then you hit Vaughn 2, and then Luis 3, and Eloy 4, and then Moncada 5, and you boast a top 5 in the top 5 lineup in baseball, just 1 through 5, if they're all playing well. And Benintendi, he's been consistent basically his whole career. 2020, he only played 14 games, and it wasn't particularly good, but for a whole season, he hasn't hit under 266, and he did that in 2019, where he hit more home runs. had the best slugging percentage of his big league career up to that point. So the White Sox, according to Zips, are 74 wins. There's a lot of ifs, a lot of ifs. If Giolito and Lynn can come back, if Moncada can be consistent, if Luis and Eloy stay on the field, if all the moons line up and all the planets, and all of these guys stay healthy and play even at league average, they can definitely be division winners. I think they can win 85 games if everybody just plays consistent, right? Not everybody has to have an OPS of 1,000, but if everybody can play to their ability and stay on the diamond, and Lynn and Giolito come back, this White Sox team, they were pegged as one of the more exciting and potentially best baseball teams for a reason. And if they can be consistent, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But again, the problem with the White Sox is extreme mediocrity. And it just seems like they can never put a full season together. They'll have stretches of greatness, but then they'll lapse for 20 games. They'll go 5-15. So we'll see. And then in terms of the minor leagues, Rick Hahn has obviously injected his lineup with a lot of young, great talents. But when you do that, you fall in the prospect rankings because all your prospects are playing at the big league level, and you're not really playing at the good enough to get a guy like Gunnar Henderson or a Adley Rutschman. They boast the 27th best minor league system in baseball currently. They do have a couple of guys who I'm excited about. Colson Montgomery plays shortstop, 20 years old, former first-round draft choice. He's already at Double-A. He's killed it everywhere he's gone. And then Oscar Colas, who is the closest to the big leagues, played really well in the minor leagues last year. Played at high A, Double-A, and Triple-A. Only 7 games at Triple-A, but he played really well in those 7 games with an OPS north of 1,000. But again, only 31 at-bats. But when you look at his high A and Double-A stats, hit 300 at both places, 360 at both places, hit 475 at single A, and then hit 563 in terms of slugging, and was able to belt 23 home runs in his first full minor league season. So the White Sox have a ton of outfield talent. I mean, they're just loaded. But when it comes to pitching, they're a little weaker when it comes to guys in the prospects. Noah Schultz is their third best prospect. They just drafted him, and a guy like Norge Vera. He's about 2 years away from the big leagues. So for the White Sox, they're not really going to get too much from the minor leagues to help them in areas where they need it, such as pitching or middle infield. But they are going to. They're going to have some talent, and we'll see. I don't think 74 wins is too low. Like I said, this is a team that has been painfully mediocre, but I think they can put together a couple of good seasons. And we're going to go ahead and just run through the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals. These are two teams who probably aren't going to make the playoffs, and honestly, if they win a collective 150 games between the two of them, I think they'll be pretty shocking. Now, the Tigers, they brought in some guys, but I think their thing is just let's focus on the young guys. Maybe we ship a couple of guys off for more prospects, and then we'll try and come back in 2024 and be better. And we can clearly see that with the rotation. They brought Matthew Boyd back, but again, he's a guy, he's going to be turning 32 this year. Probably somebody they're going to want to trade away. Michael Lorenzen, again, a guy they probably are going to want to trade towards the middle of the year. They paid a lot of money for Eduardo Rodriguez and didn't play well. Well, 405 in 17 games, but he wasn't on the field a ton. So you really hope he can kind of bounce back and be their, quote, ace of the staff. They traded away a couple of bullpen arms. Matt Manning, though, a 25-year-old right-hander who who came up last year and pitched pretty well in 12 games, 3.43 ERA. Did pitch last year as well, but he had an ERA to the tune of 5.80, so much better this year. So maybe he can take that step that they're really hoping he can do. Spencer Turnbull, 30 years old, had a 4.25 ERA last year, or career ERA rather. He had a 2.88 ERA in 9 games. So if he can stay healthy, he's another guy who could be a trade target. And then Tarek Skubal, one of their more exciting younger pieces, 26 years old, 21 games played this past year, 3.52 ERA. So they have a couple of arms who have figured it out and potentially will be top level guys for them moving forward. But they also have Casey Mize, who they used a first overall draft pick on, and while he's been okay at certain points in his career, he only pitched twice last year. So you're hoping he can come back and add another arm to their rotation that could be there for a couple of years. Like I said, they have just a bunch of guys who will be pitching a bunch of innings. I don't know if any of them are going to be particularly great. Eric Haas and Jake Rogers at catcher. Spencer Torkelson, though, a very young hitter who came up last year and wasn't very impressive, but somebody who has all the tools to be a franchise player. Jonathan Schoop and Cesar Hernandez at second base. Ryan Kreider at third base. Javi Baez, who, depending on whether or not you're a Javi guy, could bounce back and play very well. We know that he obviously can. He did it in Chicago, and he did it in New York as well. And last year wasn't great. I think last season was kind of a worst case scenario for Javi. We all know that he wasn't going to be a high on base guy, but just the strikeouts mounted 147 in 144 games. Also only hit 17 home runs. Wasn't putting the bat to the barrel or bat to the ball. It just wasn't a great season for Javi. So maybe he can step back. Akil Baddoo, who's been a bright spot in past Tiger teams and was a disappointment last year, 558 OPS and 201 at bats. Was pretty good in 2021, but things the following year weren't great. And outside of Miggy, who will be coming back, and hopefully he can continue his great career at 39 years old. How much more are you getting out of him? A 702 OPS in 2021, and then a 2022 he had a 622 OPS. So while Cabrera is a first ballot Hall of Famer, hasn't been great the last 2 years. But the one guy to really focus on for the Tigers outside of Torkelson is Riley Green, guy who came up last year, wasn't great, an OPS under 700, but an outfielder who's got speed, he's got arm. He's definitely got the talent. He's a left-handed bat, 6'3", 200 at only 22 years old. So, like I said, the Tigers are really looking forward to their young guys to not only produce, but just continue to develop. If you really think if they can get a full season of healthy Mize, they can get bounce-back seasons from Riley Thompson and Spencer Torkelson, I think the Detroit Tigers will be thinking pretty highly of themselves this year. And they also might get a pretty good prospect haul for a couple of older arms. They boast the league's 23rd best minor league system currently. And when you take a look at the minor leagues, there's not a ton coming up anytime soon, at least high-level prospects on their top 30 list. So they're kind of stuck with the team they have right now, and I think they're content with that. They're going to sell off some pieces, and hopefully some of their guys can develop into some of the best and brightest young stars in baseball. And then we're going to head to Kansas City. And Kansas City is a little different story. They have two young pitchers in Daniel Lynch and Brady Singer, who they're really looking forward to making big strides this year and becoming front-level guys. Daniel Lynch last year in 27 games had an ERA of 5. He's a guy who needs to turn around. Former first-round pick. He has the tools. He's a lefty. but we'll see. But Brady Singer, on the other hand, has shown better flashes. Had a 3.23 ERA in 27 games, 24 starts, 150 strikeouts. He's almost a strikeout per inning guy, and was much better this year than he was last year. They brought back Zach Greinke. They have Chris Bubich and Jordan Lyles, so they have a couple of guys to fill up the bottom of their rotation, but really focus in on Daniel Lynch and Brady Singer. Now, when it comes to the bullpen, they have Josh Stalmount and Scott Barlow, who are two really solid relievers, although Stalmount wasn't very good last year with a 6.45 ERA in 42 games. But he has shown that he can be much better than that. Then Scott Barlow, who at 30 years old has really come into his own. 2.18 ERA in 69 games last year. So these two guys could be very high level and pricey relief pitchers come the middle of the year. And then Amir Garrett is also on the squad. He had an ERA of 5, but he's a lefty, so somebody could take a chance out on him at the deadline. But that's about it when it comes to relief pitchers to really look on. They brought in Chapman and they have Ryan Yarbrough, but it doesn't look too great. When it comes to behind the plate, they have Salvador Perez. We know what he is. Just a really solid dude and a really good mentor for some of the younger guys. But the catcher to take over is MJ Melendez. And he had an up and down season last year in OPS at 706, had 18 home runs, struck out 131 times. So if he can bring that down and maybe get on base at a little higher clip, he'll be a guy that they're going to look to take over for Selvey when Selvey finally moves on. And then Vinny Pasquantino, who has been very good. At 25 years old, made his big league debut this past season and hit 295, 383, 450 with an OPS of 833, hit 10 home runs. So a guy that they're really looking to take a bulk of the, a lot of at-bats at first and be their best bat. Nicky Lopez and Michael Massey at second base. Same thing, Nicky Lopez at third. They have Hunter Dozier still, but we're going to wait to talk about Bobby Witt because the outfield, I just want to go over real quick because there's not a ton here. Kyle Isbell is a guy who's been around. Drew Waters, obviously a guy who has shown some flashes. 803 OPS last year. Slugged extremely high with a 479 slug, 6 doubles, 1 triple, and 5 home runs. But in 96 at-bats, he struck out 40 times. So if he can get that under control, he's somebody to really look at in the outfield. He's only 24 years old as well, so definitely room to improve on. And then let's talk about Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt has the potential to be the best shortstop in baseball. He's 6'1", 200. He's got a great build already. He's shown flashes of greatness, hit 20 home runs and stole 30 bases last year. But again, another guy who strikes out quite a bit, 135 punch-outs in an OBP under 300. So if he walks a bit more and cuts down on the strikeouts, he will continue to be one of the game's brightest stars and definitely somebody who can be a franchise piece moving forward. And much like the Tigers, the Kansas City Royals don't boast a particularly great farm system. They're sitting at 24th, and the guys they do have at the farm right now, there's a couple of guys who look to be some real contributors, but they're not going to be at the big leagues anytime soon. They have Maikel Garcia, who played at 9 games this year and hit for a high average, didn't slug very high in 22 games, so he could be somebody to come up and provide a spark if needed. He's a shortstop. But other than that, though, the minor league pieces are going to be coming in the years to come. Maybe in September if some of these guys play really well and progress through the minor leagues. But they're projected to win 70 games, and the Detroit Tigers 71. like I said, if they combined win 150 games this year, I think um, both of them will be very happy of winning 75 games. And um, if some of their young pieces like Bobby Witt and Vinny Pasquantino and Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green develop and turn into the game's young and best players, I think that's the best case scenario for the Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals. Overall, though, um, I do like the Zips projections in terms of who they have where. And just to go over it again, they've got the Guardians, Twins, White Sox, Tigers, Royals. Um, a final win total for me, they project Cleveland at 83. I think Cleveland can win 88. They have Minnesota at 80. I think they can meet that or maybe be a little bit better, 82 wins possibly. Um, for the White Sox, they have 74 wins, and in a perfect world, the White Sox will win 90 games and run away with the division. However, they have shown that they haven't been able to be consistent, and some of their, their big guys, the guys that they're really counting on to contribute at high levels, haven't been able to stay on the field for more than 100 games. So if all that happens, and Giolito and Lynn can come back and be just solid arms, this White Sox team can be very dangerous. But I'm gonna go ahead and say they won't win more than 83 games. They might be second in the division. They might be third. We'll find out. And then, like I said, the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals, if they win more than 75 wins, I'll be shocked. Um, I think both of them are around 73 wins. Um, so that's been the AL Central. We'll come back and do the AL East next time. But thank you so much for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe. Um, Thank you again for sticking with me. I know it's been quite a while since I last put out a video, but hopefully we can be a little more consistent with the upload. So once again, thank you so much. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share everywhere you'd like to. And that's been me. So thank you again for listening.